Teenagers proclaiming to be born in the wrong body and expressing confusion over gender roles. Young adults stating that salvation comes through secret knowledge, the body being called evil or bad. These statements could have been made in the days of the early church just as easily as they're being made today. If someone in the Apostle Paul's day had made these statements to him, he would have likely been wondering if he was dealing with a Gnostic. Today, they're being treated as enlightened individuals. As the transgender movement seeks to cement its place as a matter of human rights and identity, the modern church must develop a loving and truthful response that is rooted in the reality of created natures. Drawing the proper connection between ancient heresies and current cultural crusades is paramount to developing a proper approach. Making the connection requires first investigating the body as viewed by God, the Gnostics, and transgender individuals, and then taking that information and formulating an approach for discussing true transformation. God's master design was revealed in the creation account when he created two genders for humans, male and female, each made with the soul-body unity. Genesis 1:27 tells us, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." The differentness of the genders is by God's design so that each gender's reproductive system is only complete, pointing to their proper end or function when it is joined with the reproductive system of someone of the opposite gender. There is nothing accidental about God's design. God made no errors in the original design, and God makes no errors today when he designs each individual in their mother's womb and assigns their sex. God designed the human body as a body and soul unity. In a proper survey of biblical doctrine by Dr. Geisler and Dr. Potter, we read, "The image of God not only applies to the immaterial aspect of humans, the soul, but also includes the body, which emphasizes the soul-body unity that constitutes the whole person." The importance of both components of this unity is proven biblically in the reuniting of the soul and the body in the resurrection. How important must God consider the body that he promises that we're going to get it back one day? The soul-body unity is the exact point of contention for the Gnostics, who viewed the soul and the body as having different origins and being in opposition to one another. The Gnostics viewed the body as the evil creation of the demiurge. In their view, the evil material body was disconnected from the soul. In Ronald Nash's The Gospel and the Greeks, we read, "One basic theme of the Gnostic myth concerns the heavenly preexistence of human souls prior to their embodied existence in the world. Something happened in the heavenly world of light that caused each human soul's being imprisoned in its body. This imprisonment led to an ongoing discomfort in the body. Their salvation from that bodily prison could only come through special revelation, which no one else could impart or understand." That insistence that the soul matters are not up for comment for anybody outside of that house that holds that soul, that attitude is actually mirrored in the lives of transgender men and women. See, transgender individuals believe they are trapped or imprisoned in the wrong body, and they often believe that no one else can remark on what they feel because anyone on the outside has not had the same lived experience as they have. In Timothy Tennant's book, For the Body, Recovering a Theology of Gender, Sexuality, and the Human Body, he writes, "It is not uncommon for someone who is struggling with their gender identity to declare that although they are biologically a male, they feel trapped in their body, which is masking their true identity as a female, or vice versa. Gender identity is becoming decoupled from any of the normal biological markers that have distinguished male and female since the creation of the world. My personal experience with transgender individuals began in earnest a few years before the cultural acceptance of the trans movement really exploded here in America. Working as a CT tech in Nashville, I had some close encounters with transgender individuals as some doctors in our practice had begun performing the urological portions of gender reassignment surgery. I had noticed over time the surgeries were becoming very impressive. The plastic surgeries, the facial reconstructions, there were a lot of changes in a very short period of time. However, there wasn't this pressure to come into agreement or into alignment with transgender individuals' identity. I had never felt that I had to agree with a transgender individual about their name or their pronouns or anything like that. And then one day at work, there was a magazine on a chair. And I remember that day as a marker that everything changed. That magazine in the waiting room was Vanity Fair, and on the cover was track star Bruce Jenner. But it didn't say it was Bruce Jenner. The magazine said this was Caitlyn. And he was wearing a very revealing outfit. It took not just a double take, but maybe a triple or a quadruple take. This track star that we had known, this Olympic athlete, this reality TV star, was now proclaiming that he had been in the wrong body all along. And it seemed that that day was the marking point where everything changed. And suddenly you needed to agree with these individuals. You had to agree with these individuals. If they said they were really a girl, then they were really a girl. If they took on a different name, then if you are a good person, you will go along with that. And it all seemed to change so very quickly. Well, that day, looking at that magazine in retrospect, I can see what Tennant is trying to put across to us. That all of a sudden, the things that had determined being male or female since the very creation of the world, all of a sudden, we were told that those markers were dissolving, and we were now in a new world that we all had to accept. Like the Gnostics, transgender identifying men and women feel a longing for something they cannot attain. The Gnostics reconciled this by recognizing that their soul does not belong in that evil or bad house we call a body. Transgender people attempt to reconcile their dysphoria by destroying their bodies. Even the mutilation individuals experiencing gender dysphoria will inflict on their bodies is in line with Gnostic practices of asceticism and self-harm of the body that had betrayed them. The problem is that the Gnostics could never find relief because they could not know if they had reached their level deserving of escape. Likewise, transgender men and women often turn to hormone therapy, gender mutilation, and plastic surgery only to discover the dysphoria remains. Such is the case of Nisa Powers. When Nisa was a teenage boy in high school, he was experiencing extreme bullying because he was flamboyant. He went to a trusted adult, a school guidance counselor. And the counselor asked a question that would change Nisa's life and identity. When the counselor asked, "Could you be a girl?" Nisa took this to heart, ran it through a few filters, and said, "That must be the problem. That's why I'm so uncomfortable. That's why I don't fit in." Nisa would change his name to Nicole, and he would begin hormone therapy. And he lived this way for many years, was a very active voice in the transgender community, until one day he realized, I am not Nicole. I'm not a girl. I am a man. Nisa began the detransitioning process. Nisa became a born-again Christian, and now he is a very well-known influencer in social media, where he spends a lot of his time exploring churches and trying to really get a firm foundation in this new Christian faith that he has. He goes and visits with his girlfriend these different churches, and he's exploring the dynamics in that relationship as well, because his girlfriend had considered herself a lesbian, and now the girlfriend's girlfriend is saying, I'm actually going back to being a man because that's really what I am. And it's a fascinating experience to watch as Nisa is trying to navigate these new feelings and what it's like to go into a church and in the detransitioning, still looking in some ways like a woman, but trying to live life as the man he knows that he is. These sort of stories are becoming more and more frequent. Stories of people who, as children or as teenagers, were told, this dysphoria you're feeling, this discomfort you're feeling, it's because you're hiding who you really are. It's because you're really something else. And if you would just live in your truth, well, it would all be okay. But then they grow up and they find out that they had been lied to. They had been lied to by the enemy of their soul, who had told them that God had made an error in their creation. Then they were lied to by trusted adults like Nisa's guidance counselor and like the doctors who said, you can pause puberty, you can take these blockers, and then when you're ready to restart, if you want to go back, that's fine, you can do it, and there's no consequences. They didn't know that to be true, and it's coming out that it wasn't the truth. These lies have attacked this vulnerable population, young men and young women, often bullied and abused, often without good adults in their lives to speak the truth to them. They've accepted these lies, and there are consequences that they cannot undo. In keeping with that Gnostic theme, just as Gnostics believed that they had a secret knowledge, often transgender individuals scoff at the idea that anybody could speak the truth, that anybody can tell them who they actually are or give them a means of salvation from the prison that is their body. This creates a really difficult barrier for the church that wishes to reach these individuals. Understanding the connection between transgenderism and the ancient Gnostics is only the beginning. It is a primer for our next steps. The church must use this historical context, now understanding the connection to the Gnostic heresy, along with biblical knowledge that tells us we are a body-soul unity made by a perfect God who does not make mistakes. We have to marry these two things so that we can help people gain true freedom. This is more than a trend. It's more than mere confusion felt by some young people. This is a heretical attack that is destroying lives, and we can offer the lies no refuge within the church. So what will we do? In For the Body by Timothy Tennant, he asks this question: how are we going to care for the transgender community? And he says this: how we care and respond to transgender individuals is first determined by what we foundationally believe about the body and its created purpose. Showing loving care does not necessarily equate to blessing and embracing transgenderism and related experiences simply because an individual claims they are trapped in the wrong body with the wrong biological sex. The church should listen to and care about these experiences while remaining firm in our belief that this reflects a disorder, a departure from God's created design and redemptive plan. It is incumbent upon the church to remind individuals struggling with gender dysphoria that they were made in the image of God, made with intention by God. They must be reminded that He knit them together in their mother's womb, as stated in Psalm 139:13. The church must seek to see every individual we encounter as a person made in God's image, worthy of honor and respect. This was an experience I had to learn firsthand. It was one thing to be in a doctor's office performing CAT scans on transgender individuals, having to be up close to them, starting IVs, touching their bodies at times as I needed to position them on the table. That was a very different experience than the day I met Amanda. Amanda was a 15-year-old young woman who showed up at our church camp. But when she entered the grounds, she began to tell everyone that her name was not Amanda, but that it was Russ. Her standard greeting was to say, "I'm Russ. My pronouns are he, him." She never said it to me, but she said it to every camper she encountered. She then tried to make headway with the staff when she was in a small group and was asked to give her name, and she said, "Russ." When the staff member questioned her on it, she accused him of dead naming her. That's a term used by transgender individuals when someone uses the name that they have now discarded. She was a rough girl. For several days, I watched, and I gained more and more insight into Amanda. And I saw this not as mere rebellion, but this was a real spiritual battle in her mind. I began to pray and ask the Lord for wisdom and guidance. I knew what I wanted to do in my flesh. I knew that I wanted to go say some things that were probably going to be too harsh for her. So instead, I remained quiet until the Lord gave me the opportunity. Well, on Tuesday night of camp, we had a special service, and at the beginning of that service, a young person gave a devotion on Lazarus. And she talked about God calling Lazarus out of the grave, this dead man. And I could feel the Holy Spirit moving in that moment. I observed Amanda get up and move toward the altar. I saw another staff member go with her, and before I knew it, I was moving too. This was the moment I was waiting for, but I didn't know what I would say when I got to her. But the Lord, ever faithful, He gave the words at just the right moment. I came close to Amanda, and I asked her if she had heard that devotion. She nodded. I told her that I knew about that confrontation in the small group and how she said that she had been dead named. And then I pointed out that she had just heard the story of a man in the Bible whom God called by name, and he was raised from the dead. And I told her, God is not calling Russ right now, but He's calling Amanda because He knows you. He knows you perfectly because He made you in His image. I told her that God was drawing her in through the power of the Holy Spirit in that moment, and how her life did not have to be the same when she got up from that place. I shared the gospel with Amanda that night. She prayed, she received salvation. She spent the rest of that evening reintroducing herself to the other campers and the staff, and she testified that she had been claiming to be a boy for 3 years under what she knew all along was not her true identity. The next day, she asked if I would go with her to call her mother and get permission to be baptized. After they spoke, her mother asked to speak to me. Her mom began to share that Amanda had been violently raped by a man when she was 12 years old. And that's when everything had changed. You see, Amanda had been blaming her body for what had happened to her. Amanda felt like she had been betrayed by her body, and that it caused this wicked, evil person to do unspeakable things to her. And she had spent the next 3 years hiding and trying to be something different as a means of protection. There's nothing funny about it. There's nothing to make light of in it. And there's certainly nothing to rejoice or celebrate in this young woman hiding because of this awful thing that had happened to her. Without the power of the Holy Spirit guiding, I don't think I could have had the right conversation with Amanda. Because this transgender issue, it's deeper than what we see. It's a spiritual fight, and we have to deal with it spiritually. There is nothing new about the concepts being repeated throughout the trans community. The church should swiftly recognize the Gnostic roots of this movement and take a firm stance against anything which would look like unity between us and a heresy. This stance is not unloving, as some would claim, but it is a fulfillment of the love that puts eternal matters above popularity and acceptance.